I was in the grocery store this week and getting stuff from the deli, and the woman who was waiting on me said, "I'll tell you, I'll be glad when Christmas is over." And I asked her why, and she said, "I'm sick of the music." You see, in the grocery store there, they play Christmas music. It's going on all the time. And I guess that would get old if you were in there 5 days a week and you had to listen to it every day, all day. And I'm sure she's been listening to it since before Thanksgiving. And it is true this year that we hear a lot of Christmas music. Much of it is about the secular aspect of Christmas and not anything about Jesus. But many of the songs are religious songs, and they are about the birth of Jesus. They concentrate on a baby being born, on the angels and shepherds and the quietness of the night. They're happy songs about babies not crying, the peace and quiet, all that. But some of the popular Christmas songs, when you really look at them, are much more than that. They are poetic expressions of deep meaning, and they reflect a deep understanding of the Christian faith. They go beyond the talk of a cute little baby and reflect a deep understanding of the implications of what that baby meant. Some of them contain very basic and very important Christian beliefs. Beliefs that sometimes we can neglect to emphasize, and often beliefs that we skip over and people have forgotten about. So today I thought it would be interesting to look at some more popular Christmas carols closely and see what you find. And first I want us to look at a very popular one. It's "Hark the Herald Angels Sing." And it goes like this: "Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconcile. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With the angelic host proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King." Now most people know that one. That's the first verse, but what I really wanted to look at was the second verse. It goes like this: "Christ by highest heaven adored, Christ the everlasting Lord, long desired, behold him come, finding here his humble home. Veiled in flesh the Godhead see, hail the incarnate deity, pleased as man with men to dwell, Jesus our Emmanuel." The emphasis of that verse is on Jesus as God. It talks about the everlasting Lord, the incarnate deity, and something that becomes incarnate is something that takes flesh, and that's what we call the incarnation, is when God took flesh and became Jesus. And then it talks about Emmanuel, that literally means God with us. And so notice it says that God is with us, and it says, pleased as man with men to dwell. And this reflects a very basic belief of Christianity. Jesus did not just appear to be a human being. He did not just come and inhabit a human body. The basic Christian belief is that God came and became one of us, just like we are. God, the creator, the upholder, the sustainer of the entire universe, left that role, sort of, and came here and became a creature, just like we are. Now that verse has the phrase Godhead in it. And a lot of times I've heard people talk about that. They say, well, that represents the Trinity, a three-headed God. It's like you've got God and the Godhead is three different things. That's not what that means. That is a corruption of an Old English word, Godheed. And that is just a word for God. It's just an Old English word for God. It's not a three-headed God type thing. Now I want to look at the third verse. It says, "Hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace. Hail the Son of Righteousness. Light and life to all he brings. risen with healing in his wings. Mild he lays his glory by, born that man no more may die, born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. This speaks of Jesus bringing life and light to all. And we've talked before how what Christianity is really concerned with is life, eternal life. And it says about Jesus, risen with healing in his wings. And interesting that this one event it talks about in the life of Jesus is his resurrection. And we've talked in here before about how the resurrection was the point where the real work of Jesus was accomplished. A lot of people want to say it was accomplished on the cross. But the real work of Jesus was accomplished at the resurrection with the defeat of death. And so the emphasis of this verse is on life. It is on resurrection. It is on the defeat of death and birth to a new life. Now there's an interesting phrase in there, mild he lays his glory by. And remember, this is talking about God coming here as a human being. And that's what we see in Jesus. God lays his glory by. And God comes here and becomes one of us. Becomes a person in every way, just like we are. In every way. You know, I've had conversations before with people who thought that Jesus never used the bathroom. Jesus never got sick. Jesus never sneezed. Jesus never had a sore throat. Jesus never got tired. Jesus never got angry. It was like they had this image of Jesus as just an idealized figure walking around. But that's not what Christianity says about Jesus. Christianity says that Jesus was in every way just like we are. He got sick. He did bowel movements. He had diarrhea. Now, I know that's not nice to think about, but we've got to think about Jesus as a person in every way, just like we are, in every way. That was one of the big disagreements in ancient Christianity for the first 200 or 300 years. There was great struggling and great arguing over that right there. There was a lot of people that just could not accept that. And a lot of people say, no, Jesus only appeared to be a human being. He really wasn't. And they'd say, well, Jesus wasn't really a human being. He just inhabited the spirit. But the way it was settled is the traditional Christian belief that Jesus became one of us, just like us. Philippians chapter 2 says, he emptied himself, made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of man. And so he emptied himself. Now I want us to look at another Christmas carol, Angels from the Realms of Glory. This has always been one of my favorite ones. It's real hard to sing, but I like it. Angels from the realms of glory, wing your flight o'er all the earth. Ye who sang creation's story, now proclaim Messiah's birth. Come and worship Christ, your newborn King. And then it says, shepherds in the fields abiding, watching o'er your flocks by night. God with man is now residing. Yonder shines the infant light. And this emphasizes that God is the one lying in the manger. God has become one of us. You think about how helpless a baby is. You know, I've never had a baby, obviously. We've never had one. But I've seen it. They can't do anything. I mean, they just lay there. And they have to depend on somebody to do everything for them. They have to depend on somebody to feed them every bit of food, move them around, keep them covered up, keep them changed. They have to depend on somebody else for everything. And yet here is God, the creator of the entire universe, And he's coming into the world as a 100% dependent baby. He lays everything down and comes into the world just like that. Then you go on. Saints before the altar bending, watching long in hope and fear. Suddenly the Lord descending in his temple shall appear. And this is a poetic rendering referencing the second coming of Jesus. And we talked in here before about how the second coming of Jesus is associated with his birth. The first Sunday of Advent is a lot of times used to celebrate the second coming of Jesus. It is connected with the Christmas and Advent season. And it's interesting in this song that the second coming is the only real event of Jesus' life that is mentioned. You see, when we looked at the other one, Hark the Herald, it was the resurrection. This one is the second coming. And so this puts the concentration on the victory of Jesus. When God comes the second time in power and glory. The first time God may have come as a helpless baby, but the second time he comes in power and glory, and he makes all things new. Then move on to one, it came upon the midnight clear. This is another one I like. It came upon the midnight clear, this glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their hearts of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to men, from heaven's all gracious King. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Notice it says God is all gracious. Notice goodwill to men. You see, this tells us that God does not consider himself our enemy. God considers himself our friend, all gracious with goodwill. And so how does God look at us? With graciousness and with goodwill. And when God comes, it is not to come to destroy human beings. It is to come to rescue human beings. The next verse says, and ye beneath life's crushing load, whose forms are bending low, who toil along the climbing way with painful steps and slow. Look now, for glad and golden hours come swiftly on the wing. Oh, rest beside the weary road and hear the angels sing. Now this talks about how hard and difficult life is. And you know, life is hard and difficult. We know of people right now who I would say are breaking beneath the crushing load. Life's not easy for anyone, but for some people it is especially difficult. It can crush us. It can be painful. It can bend us over. But notice what it said. Oh, rest beside the weary road and hear the angels sing. You see, Jesus is coming to rescue people from life like that. And that's good news to us. The fourth verse. For lo, the days are hastening on, by prophet bards foretold, when with the ever-circling years comes round the age of gold, when peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendors flame, and the whole world sing back the song which now the angels sing. That verse contains that concept of ages that we talked about a long, long time ago, the ever-circling years. You know, a long, long time ago, we talked about how you can interpret Genesis 1 and 2 as meaning that Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's in the beginning, the very beginning. And the earth was without form and void. That's the beginning of this age. And we saw how in ancient Judaism it was very popular to see the history of the world as a succession of different ages one age ends, another age begins. And that's been going on numerous ages since the beginning. But then comes around what this song calls the age of gold, the last age. The age in which the purpose of the circle of ages has been fulfilled. And that is the advent of Jesus. At the second coming of Jesus then, a new age begins that lasts forever, that will never end. That is the age of gold. And when we talked about that, we looked at the book of Ephesians, and we saw how if you translated that literally from the Greek instead of trying to cover it over the way most English translations do, that concept of ages is all over the book of Ephesians. And so this age is the age before the golden age begins, because this is the age when Jesus came. And this song talks about ancient splendors of peace. It talks about how peace used to rule over the world. There was a time when things were as God created them to be. But something spoiled. And God is making it once again to be as He originally created it to be. We've talked before how you can look at the book of Genesis from chapter 3 on to the end of Revelation and see how that is the process by which God reversed what happened when Adam and Eve ate the fruit. Now I want to look at another one. God rest ye merry gentlemen. It says, God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. Now this is a hymn that's often changed in modern hymn books. Back in the 70s it got started really, that's really gained steam in more recent hymn books is that when somebody puts out a new hymn book, they'll go through and they'll change the words. And if they didn't like what the words were, they'll just change them to something else. And this one gets changed. It is to save us all from Satan's power, and that gets changed to save us all from sin and death. And of course, it's not popular in Christianity to talk about Satan's power today, and so they change it to sin and death. But this is one of the original ways the work of Jesus was understood, to save us all from Satan's power. In other words, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the Garden of Eden that God told them not to eat, somehow because of that, Satan became the ruler of the world. Jesus himself spoke of Satan as the ruler of the world. Satan got a hold of us, was dragging us down to death. Jesus comes to earth, and through his death and resurrection, he breaks the stranglehold Satan had on us and frees us from the bonds of Satan. That was the ancient understanding of what Jesus did. It's interesting that the more modern hymnals, people change words in them to get them to go along with what they want to change Christianity into. But I like to look at the original one. And finally, one I wanted us to look at, it's not very popular anymore, you seldom hear this one. It's called I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. I thought of how the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. Those words were written by the American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and they were later set to music as a Christmas carol. They were written during the time of the Civil War, and Longfellow had every reason to be depressed. Just a short time previously, his wife had been killed in a tragic fire, and his son had been seriously injured in the Civil War, and it was at that point not clear if he would survive or not. And here it came up to be Christmas Day. And here's Longfellow, recently lost his wife, his son, seriously wounded, injured. It's Christmas Day, and he's looking out, and church bells are ringing everywhere, and he's thinking of how the angels sang, "Peace on earth, goodwill to men." And the bells were ringing. That was going through his head. And he thought, wait a minute. There is no peace on earth. There is no goodwill to men. Tragic things happen. People get involved in wars. The angels might have said that 2,000 years ago, peace on earth, goodwill to men, but it didn't work out. Evil and hate were not conquered. There's no peace on earth. There's no goodwill to men. But then he kept hearing it, and he said, wait a minute. God's not defeated. God didn't give up, and God didn't lose. God didn't change his mind. God's still fighting, and God will win. Good will prevail. There will be peace on earth and goodwill to men. God is working on it now, and it will come to pass. When I first heard that song years ago, it had sort of a mesmerizing effect on me. It is a concise expression of what Christianity is all about. In fact, it is the most concise expression of what Christianity is all about that I've ever heard. So I want to leave you with these words. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. I thought as how the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. That is what we celebrate at Christmas.